The silent colony, the forgotten. Outpost, Meridian Station music hung in the darkness like a small jewel. Against the vast canvas of space, it orbited a lifeless red music, dwarf. Star in a system that most maps didn't even bother to name. The colony housed only 12,000 souls, but to them it was home. They had come here not for glory or adventure, but for simple, honest work. The asteroids circling their small world were rich with rare minerals that Earth needed for its growing civilization. Director Sarah Chin stood in the observation deck, watching the mining ships return from their daily harvest. She was a woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen both joy and hardship. She had built this colony from nothing over 15 years, watching it grow from a single habitat module to a thriving community. Her people trusted her. They believed she would always keep them safe. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb walked up beside her carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee. He was younger than Sarah, barely 40, with a kind of enthusiasm that never seemed to fade. No matter how hard the work became, he handed her a cup and smiled. The coffee tasted terrible as it always did, but it was warm and familiar. Another successful day, Marcus said, looking at the incoming ships. We exceeded our quota by 15%. Earth will be pleased. Sarah nodded but said nothing. Something had been bothering her for weeks. The surveys had picked up strange readings at the edge of their system. Ships that appeared for moments before vanishing again. When she reported it to Earth Command, they told her it was probably sensor errors or natural phenomena. They told her not to worry. But Sarah Chin had survived this long by trusting her instincts, and her instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The Watchers in the dark, 3 million km away, hidden behind a field of debris, the Zephroni fleet waited. Supreme Commander Vax Thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the human colony with cold calculation. The Zephroni were an old race, ancient by galactic standards. They had seen civilizations rise and fall across 10,000 years. They had conquered 17 different species and absorbed their territories into the ever-expanding Zephroni Empire. To Vax Thor, humans were merely the latest addition to a very long list. His intelligence officers had been watching Earth's expansion for decades. They had seen humans spread across their solar system and then reach out to the stars beyond. They had studied human technology and found it primitive. They had analyzed human military capacity and found it laughable. Meridian Station was chosen specifically because of its isolation. It was far from Earth, far from help, and poorly defended. The attack would serve 2 purposes. First, it would give the Zephroni valuable data about how humans responded to aggression. Second, it would send a clear message to Earth that their expansion would go no further without Zephroni permission. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Vaxter smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Begin the operation. The day everything changed. It was morning in Meridian Station when the alarm started screaming. Sarah Chin was in her office reviewing supply reports when every screen in the room turned red. She ran to the command center, her heart pounding. Marcus was already there, his face pale as he stared at the sensor displays. 67 warships, he whispered. They just appeared from nowhere, Sarah. They're already firing. The first missiles hit the outer defense grid. Meridian Station had never been built for war. Its defenses were designed to deflect asteroids and debris, nothing more. The protective satellites died in seconds, torn apart by weapons far beyond anything humans had seen before. Sarah grabbed the station-wide communication system. This is Director Chin. All personnel, emergency evacuation protocol. Get to the shelters now. This is not a drill, but even as she spoke, she knew it was pointless. The alien ships were targeting the habitat modules directly. She watched on the screens as the residential sector took a direct hit. 1,500 people lived, their families, children. In one terrible moment, they were simply gone. Marcus was shouting into his headset, trying to organize a defense with the station's minimal security forces. They had 3 small patrol boats and a handful of defensive platforms against 67 alien warships. They might as well have been throwing rocks. The massacre continued for 90 minutes. The aliens were methodical, destroying one section of the station at a time. Sarah watched her life's work burn. She watched her people die, and she felt something inside her break and then reform into something harder, something colder. The last transmission, only the central core of the station remained intact. Sarah and Marcus had retreated there with the survivors, barely 800 people from a population of 12,000. The alien ships had stopped firing, but they hadn't left. They were waiting, watching to see if any help would come. Marcus worked frantically at a damaged communication console. I can get a signal out, he said. It's going to use all our remaining power, but I can punch a message through to Earth. Sarah nodded. Do it. Marcus sent the message on all frequencies, using every bit of power the dying station had left. The message was simple but devastating. It contained everything: the attack footage, the casualty numbers, the images of dead children in the ruined schools, the recorded transmissions of families saying goodbye to each other as their sections of the station were destroyed. And at the end, Sarah Chin herself appeared on the recording. Her face was covered in soot and blood. Her uniform was torn, but her eyes were clear and her voice was steady. This is Director Sarah Chin of Meridian Station. Unknown hostile forces attacked our colony without warning or provocation. We have lost over 11,000 civilian lives. Our defenses were overwhelmed in minutes. We never had a chance. She paused, gathering her strength. To whoever receives this message, remember what happened here. Remember that we were just miners and farmers. Remember that we had children who will never grow up. Remember that we asked for nothing except the right to live in peace. She looked directly into the camera. And to Earth, if you're listening, do not let this stand. Do not let our deaths mean nothing. Show them what humanity really is. Show them why they should have left us alone. The transmission ended. Marcus looked at Sarah with tears in his eyes. What do we do now? Sarah walked to the window and looked out at the alien fleet. Now we wait. Either help comes or we die with our people, but either way, this will not be forgotten. Earth receives the message. The transmission reached Earth 42 hours later. It arrived at the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Luna and was immediately flagged as Priority Alpha. Within minutes it was being broadcast to every government on Earth. The reaction was not what they Zeffroni expected. There was no panic. There were no desperate pleas for peace. Instead, something changed in humanity. That day, something ancient and terrible woke up after sleeping for generations. In the halls of the United Earth Assembly, politicians who had spent their careers arguing about trade policy and resource allocation suddenly found themselves united in a way that had not been seen in 200 years. Every screen showed the burning colony, every speaker played Director Chen's final words. And, across Earth, millions of people stopped what they were doing and watched. They watched the children dying, they watched the families torn apart, they watched peaceful miners burned alive in their homes, and they remembered something their ancestors had known but they had tried to forget. Humanity had not always been peaceful. For thousands of years, humans had waged war against each other with a creativity and ferocity that had nearly destroyed their entire species. They had built weapons that could end civilizations. They had developed tactics that turned warfare into an art form. They had learned to kill with such efficiency that they had finally frightened themselves into peace. But peace was a choice, not a weakness. And when someone attacked their children, humans remembered exactly how to make that choice differently. Admiral James Kirby stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, looking at screens that showed something the public had never seen, something that had been hidden for generations, waiting for a day everyone hoped would never come. Wake them up, he said quietly. Wake them all up. It's time the galaxy met the real humanity. The reckoning, the hidden truth. Admiral James Kirby had spent 40 years keeping Earth's greatest secret. He was a tall man with iron gray hair and scars that told stories he never shared. He had joined the military when he was 18, back when Earth was still recovering from the last war that had nearly destroyed humanity. He had seen what humans could do to each other when they stopped holding back, and he had sworn that the galaxy would never see that side of humanity unless absolutely necessary. That day had come. In the war room, the United Earth Assembly gathered in emergency session. Presidents, prime ministers, and council members from every nation sat in stunned silence as Admiral Kirby activated screens they had never seen before. The screens showed facilities that officially did not exist, shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt, weapons platforms disguised as research stations, training centers buried deep in the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. For 150 years, Kirby Clear's throat began, his voice echoing. In the chamber, Earth has maintained what we call the Sentinel Protocol. While we showed the galaxy a peaceful face, we never forgot our history. We never forgot what we were capable of. And we never stopped preparing for the day someone would mistake our kindness for weakness. The screens changed, showing numbers that made the assembly members gasp. Ship counts, weapon specifications, personnel rosters, everything humanity had built in secret, while the rest of the galaxy believed them to be harmless explorers. President Maria Santos of the Panamanian Union stood up, her hands shaking. How many ships do we actually have, Admiral? Kirby's expression was grim. Publicly, we have 240 vessels for system defense and exploration. In reality, we have 6,300 warships, all fully crewed and ready to deploy within 72 hours. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Kirby waited for them to quiet down before continuing. The Zephroni believe they attacked the defenseless colony. They believe Earth will beg for mercy or offer them concessions. They have no idea what's coming for them. The assembly of wrath across human space. The hidden facilities came alive. On Mars, massive doors that had been sealed for generations slid open, revealing shipyards carved into the planets. Crust, hundreds of warships emerged, their hulls painted in colors that absorbed light, making them nearly invisible against the darkness of space. Captain Jennifer Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching her crew prepare for launch. She was only 32 years old, but she had trained her entire life for this moment. Her father had served in the Sentinel fleet. Her grandfather before him, every member of her family for 3 generations had been part of Earth's hidden military, waiting and hoping they would never be needed. Now they were needed. All systems green, her tactical officer reported. Lieutenant David Park was a weapons specialist who could calculate firing solutions in his head faster than most computers. He had gentle eyes that contradicted his deadly skills. Reactors at full power, weapons armed and ready. Jennifer nodded and opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. This is Captain Torres to all Mars battle group vessels. We launch in 10 minutes. Our destination is the Zeffroni border. Our mission is to make them understand that attacking human civilians was the worst mistake they will ever make. In the asteroid belt, Commander Robert Hayes watched similar scenes unfold. His ship, the UES Vengeance, was what humans called a dreadnought, a vessel so large it had its own gravitational field. It carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet, and it was just one of 50 such ships hidden throughout the solar system. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving reports from the other battle groups. Everyone is ready. They're all asking the same question. How far do we go? Robert thought about the images he had seen from Meridian Station. He thought about Director Chen's final transmission. He thought about the 11,000 people who had died for no reason except that they had been in the wrong place when the Zeffroni decided to demonstrate their power. We go, he said slowly, until there's nothing left of the Zeffroni military, until every ship that participated in the attack is destroyed, until their emperor understands that humanity is not prey. First blood. The Zeffroni patrol fleet guarding the border between their space and human territory consisted of 90 warships. They had been stationed there for weeks, waiting to intercept any human vessels that might try to retaliate from Meridian Station. Supreme Commander Vthor had ordered them to capture any human ships intact if possible. He wanted to study their technology and interrogate their crews. Fleet Commander Kelrath was confident in his assignment. 90 Zeffroni cruisers could handle anything the humans might send. He sat in his command chair, reviewing reports and planning his strategy for the inevitable human response. His sensors detected the incoming ships when they were still an hour away. Kelrath smiled. How many vessels? He asked his tactical officer. 300, Commander, all relatively small. Nothing larger than a frigate. Kelrath's confidence grew. 300 small ships against 90 cruisers. The humans were making this too easy. All ships. Battle formation. Prepare to disable and capture. The Emperor wants prisoners. His fleet moved into their standard attack pattern, a formation that had proven successful against dozens of enemies over the centuries. They waited for the human ships to come into range. Then the universe exploded. 500 Additional human vessels appeared from fold space, materializing behind, above, and below the Zephroni fleet. They had been there all along, hidden by technology the Zephroni didn't know existed, and they opened fire. Immediately, Captain Torres watched from the Retribution as her weapons found their targets. Human rail guns fired solid projectiles at percentages of light speed. Each impact released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. Zephroni shields designed to stop energy weapons and missiles were useless against kinetic projectiles moving that fast. The first Zephroni cruiser simply ceased to exist, transformed from a mighty warship into expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. Then the second, then the third. Kelreth screamed orders, but his fleet was in chaos. The humans weren't fighting the way enemies were supposed to fight. They moved in perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be. Their weapons fired with impossible accuracy. Their point defense systems intercepted every Zephroni missile and torpedo. In 17 minutes it was over. 90 Zephroni cruisers had become 90 fields of wreckage. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. They had barely been scratched. Torres opened a channel on all Zephroni frequencies. This is Captain Jennifer Torres of the United Earth Ship Retribution. You attacked Meridian Station. You killed 11,000 human civilians. You murdered children in their schools. This is our response. Tell your emperor we are coming. The emperor's fear on the Zephroni home world of Zephyro and LT Uncan GT's prime emperor. Thalen received the reports in his throne room. He was an ancient being, over 300 years old, who had ruled the empire for 2 centuries. He had overseen the conquest of 17 species. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed entire civilizations. He had never known true fear until now. His military advisors stood before him, their heads bowed in shame. Explain this to me, Thulkan demanded, his voice like thunder. How did we lose 90 cruisers without destroying a single human ship? Supreme Commander Vax Thor stepped forward. He looked like he had aged a decade and a day. Your Majesty, we underestimated them severely. The humans have technology we didn't know existed. Their weapons, their tactics, their coordination, everything is far beyond what our intelligence predicted. Then get better intelligence, Thalen roared. How many ships do they actually have? Vaxer's voice was barely a whisper. We don't know, Your Majesty. Our estimate said 200, but they just deployed 800 in a single battle, and our sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout human space. Thousands of ships are heading toward our borders. The throne room went silent. Thalen felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt how many thousands? At least 6,000, Your Majesty. Possibly more. They're still emerging from hidden bases. Thalen stood from his throne, his massive form towering over his advisors. Assemble the Grand Fleet, every ship we have, every vessel that can fight. We will meet these humans with overwhelming force and crush them. But as he gave the orders, Thalen wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had hidden their strength for generations. What else had they hidden? What other weapons did they possess? And most terrifying of all, what would they do when they reached Zephroni space? The Battle of the Crimson Nebula. The Zephroni Grand Fleet assembled in the Crimson Nebula. vast cloud of red gas and stellar debris that lay between Zeffroni space and human territory. It was the largest military force the Empire had ever gathered in one place, 2,800 warships, including the Emperor's personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Thalen stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the sea of ships surrounding him. This was the full might of the Zeffroni Empire, accumulated over centuries of conquest. Surely no enemy could stand against such power. His sensors detected the human fleet when they were still 2 hours away. Admiral Kirby was leading them personally, commanding from the U.S. Prometheus, humanity's most powerful vessel. Human fleet numbered 6,000 ships, and they were advancing in a formation the Zeffroni had never seen before. They're splitting into smaller groups, Vaxter reported, studying the tactical displays. Each group has mixed vessel types, dreadnoughts, cruisers, frigates, all working together. I don't understand this strategy. Then watch the approaching humans with growing unease. How long until they're in range? 1 hour. Your Majesty, all ships prepare to engage. We will destroy them here and end this war before it truly begins. But when the battle started, Thalen realized the horrible truth. The war had already been decided. The humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Before the Zeffroni even developed space travel, they had refined warfare into a science. They had developed tactics for every situation, strategies for every opponent, and they had learned something the Zeffroni had never needed to learn. They had learned how to fight enemies who were stronger than them. Because for most of human history, humans had only fought other humans, and both sides always had similar technology. So humans had learned to win through superior tactics, better coordination, and an absolute refusal to give up. The human fleet moved like a living organism. Small groups would strike at Zeffroni formations, then retreat before reinforcements could arrive. Larger groups would appear where the Zeffroni were weakest, punching holes in their lines, and always the human weapons found their marks. Commander Hayes watched from the Vengeance as his dreadnoughts' main guns fired. The particle beams could melt through a Zeffroni cruiser in seconds. The plasma torpedoes left nothing but gas clouds where ships used to be, and the rail guns, those beautiful rail guns, turned enemy vessels into debris. With every shot, target their flagship. Hayes ordered, "Let's show the Emperor what humanity really is." The Eternal Dominion was the pride of the Zeffroni Empire. It was 5 km long, heavily armored and armed with weapons that had destroyed planets. 20 human ships focused their fire on it simultaneously. The combination of rail gun impacts, plasma torpedoes, and particle beams overwhelmed even its massive shields. Falson felt his ship shaking beneath him. Alarm screamed. His crew shouted reports of failing systems and breached holes. He looked at the tactical display and saw his fleet dying around him. 2,800 ships reduced to hundreds in less than an hour. "Retreat," he whispered. Then louder, "Retreat, all ships fall back to Zeffro and LT Uncan GT's Prime." The new order. The Zeffroni Grand Fleet limped home, having lost over 2,000 ships. The human fleet pursued them all the way to the border of Zeffroni home space, destroying stragglers and broadcasting simple message on all frequencies. Admiral Kirby's face appeared on every screen throughout Zephyr territory. People of the Zephroni Empire, your leaders attacked a peaceful human colony. They murdered 11,000 civilians. They killed children. They believed we were weak because we chose peace. He paused, his eyes cold and hard. You will withdraw from all territories you have conquered in the last 50 years. You will pay reparations to the families of every person who died at Meridian Station. You will surrender the officers responsible for ordering the attack, and you will never ever threaten humanity again. If you refuse, we will not invade your worlds. We will not occupy your territory. We will simply erase your military from existence. Every ship, every base, every weapon you have will be destroyed, and then we will leave you defenseless in a galaxy full of species you have made into enemies. The transmission ended. Emperor Thalen sat on his throne, looking at his broken empire. He had no choice. The alternative was extinction. Within a week, he agreed to all of Earth's demands. The conquered territories were freed, the reparations were paid, and the officers who had ordered the attack on Meridian Station, including Supreme Commander Vax Thor, were turned over to human authorities. On Earth, the Sentinel fleet returned to its hidden bases. The ships disappeared back into their secret facilities. The crews went back to their cover identities as miners and scientists, and the galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Humanity had chosen peace not because they were weak, but because they were terrifyingly strong. They had hidden their power because they remembered what happened when they didn't, and anyone foolish enough to attack human civilians would discover that humanity's mercy had limits. Director Sarah Chin survived the attack on Meridian Station. She stood at the memorial built for the 11,000 who had died, watching as Admiral Kirby laid a wreath at the monument. Will this prevent future attacks? She asked. Quietly, Kirby looked at the names carved into the memorial, thousands of them, each representing a life cut short. Yes, he said simply. Galaxy knows now. Humanity is not prey. We are the apex predator that chose to be vegetarian, but if you make us remember what we really are, we will show you why every species on Earth learned to fear humans. Sarah nodded, touching the memorial one last time. 11,000 people had died, but their deaths had ensured that no other human colony would suffer the same fate. The Zephroni had learned their lesson, and the rest of the galaxy had learned it. Too, humanity was peaceful, but peace was a choice.